Hi guys, I'm Talia's Threads and today I'm going to be showing you how to make my Cornwall Crossbody pattern. And this is the bag that we make in the tutorial. This is the size medium and it has two slip pockets on the front. There is a pattern piece provided for this, but in the instructions it's intended for the inside. You will also learn how to do a Welt zipper pocket. So there is a zipper pocket set in to the lining, and then the bag is fully lined with bias bound seams, and you will also learn how to make an adjustable strap. I'm going to put some pictures from my pattern testers up on the screen just so that you can get an idea for the different possibilities, and then also for the 3 different sizes and what they look like on a body. But please, if you feel like you gain value from this video during the tutorial, click the subscribe and like the video. It really helps me out and it will push my video out there. So yeah, I hope you enjoy. So let's get into it. You're going to need an iron and an ironing board. That's to attach the interfacing. I have a rotary cutter, it's my favourite cutting method. And then some thread snips for the machine, an unpicker. You'll be sorry if you need it and you don't have one. Then tweezers or an awl, and these can help you feed the fabric through, especially around tight corners without getting your fingers in the way and potentially sewing through them or anything like that. And then I have pins and clips, because with bag making sometimes you're pinning together thinner layers, sometimes you've got more bulky layers and you do need to use clips for that. Then the thread I've got is Gusset Mara, which is a sew-all thread, but it does need to be polyester for bag making, and you can use a heavier weight thread as well if your machine can take it. And then bias tape, you can buy a pack of bias tape or you can make yours yourself. I always just make mine out of fabric scraps that I have left over. And then we've got the hardware, so I've got 1 rectangle ring and 1 slider. Some heavy duty needles, these ones are Topstitch. You could use denim, leather, most of those sorts of needles are going to work for this project as long as they're just a more sturdy needle. And then a zipper foot. Then for the inside of the bag there's a Welt zipper pocket, and you need a size 3 zipper for that, and then you need a size 5 zipper for the main opening of the bag. And actually I have a really long separating one today, but the color goes perfectly with the project that I'm doing, so I will show you how to resize that as well if that's something that you need to do, because this has plastic teeth and you cannot sew over it, whereas if you have like a nylon coil zipper you can sew over that one perfectly fine. But yeah, plastic teeth or metal, you cannot sew over these, so you need to pull them off so they won't be in the seam allowance. And then strap webbing if you're using webbing for a strap, but I will also be showing you how to make your own strap today. And then this is 1/8 inch wide double-sided seam tape, and it's going to help us stick our zipper perfectly in place when we're doing our Welt pocket. And then of course the pattern. If you don't have the pattern, then I will have it linked below and you can go and get one of those, and it comes in print at home, copy shop, large format, and also projector files. For my outer fabric I have this gorgeous like heavyweight cotton twill. Really you can use whatever you want, just be aware of the structure that it will give, and if you can't fuse it to interfacing, for instance like ripstop nylon, I find it bubbles up, so you'll have to use a different technique, perhaps a sew-in interfacing or something like that. But just consider that while you're making your fabric choice. I'm going to interface it with this woven interfacing. I've used it on many of these bags so far and I really like how it fuses. So this is my lining. This is another cotton canvas, but it's more of like a medium weight. I would say if your machine really struggles with layers of bulk, then just go for like a lightweight cotton, like a quilting cotton or something like that. Something that's quite stable, because we're going to be setting in a Welt zipper pocket. Before I start cutting out all my fabrics, I'm going to cut these pieces out of interfacing and then fuse them to the wrong side of my outer fabric. And then I'm going to use the pattern piece to cut it out again. So you need 2 strap tabs cut out of interfacing, and then you need 1 gusset and 2 main panels. I'm just going to give my fabric a quick press before I start to interface, because if there's any creases in it, then the creases are just going to get set in when you attach the glue. So I'm just using the pattern piece to now cut this out again. And don't worry if you can't line it up exactly, as long as there's generally interfacing in the main body. If it's missing from some of the seam allowances, it doesn't really matter. So I've cut everything out, and I thought I would just go through all of the pieces that I have. I've got 2 main panels in lining, and I have marked this pocket stitching line for the welt pocket on one of them, and then I have my 2 outer main panels and they are interfaced. And then for the gusset, I have 1 lining and 1 interfaced outer. And then for the strap tab, I've got 2 lining and 2 interfaced outer fabrics. For the zipper tab, I've got 2 lining and 2 outer fabrics. These don't need to be interfaced. And for the welt pocket, I have got 1 lining piece, and then the marking for the pocket stitching line is marked on the wrong side. For the slip pocket, you actually only need 1 lining piece, which I have here. I am going to hack my bag to have a slip pocket on the outside as well, so I have got 1 outer piece. To prep the welt pocket, you need to match these stitching lines, and the easiest way to do that is to put a pin through each corner and match it up. I actually think if you do 2 corners, that will be enough. And then I'm going to go and stitch around the edge, and then I'm going to drop my needle on the corners and lift up the presser foot so that I can twist the project and get a nice crisp corner on each one. To open up the welt pocket, you're going to cut down the middle bit, leaving maybe ½ inch on each side, and then you're going to cut out from that line as close as you can to the corners. If you don't get close enough to these stitching lines, then there'll be puckers around the edge of the welt zipper pocket and it won't lay flat. So try and get as close as you can, but definitely don't cut them, because then the pocket will come apart. Fold this through the opening and then give it a really nice good press so that it's all sitting flat. Now that it's all pressed, you're going to top stitch 1/8 of an inch around the edge. So to attach the zipper to the welt pocket opening, I've cut out 2 lengths of 8 inches of my double-sided tape, and starting where the zipper pull stops, I'm going to just stick it as close as I can to the edge on both sides. And then just center it behind this, and you can peel it off and re-stick it if it's not perfect the first time. Now I'm just going to go and follow this stitching line that I made in the last step around the zipper, and you can pull the pull out of the way if you need to, and do this in 2 passes, or drop your needle into the project and like shimmy this past the foot. If you've used a zipper that's longer, just trim off any excess. To close the pocket, you're just going to fold the bottom up and match the 3 open sides and stitch around. I usually try and stitch from this side because I can have more control over folding the main panel out of the way. This looks pretty tight. I actually increased the seam allowance on the side of the pocket a little bit on the pattern, so it will be easier for you to sew around this. Fold this edge over 1/2 inch and press it, and then fold it again so that the raw edge is encased, and then I'm going to stitch along that open edge there to hem. For this outside slip pocket that I'm adding on, I'm going to chop the top off 1 inch down because there's an inch of hem allowance, because I've decided I'm actually going to bias bind this edge with brown to tie in the brown a little bit more. So I've just added some double fold bias tape to the edge. I'm not going into it because it's a hack, and then also I'm going to bias bind the inner seams, and it's going to be the same method. So you can always skip ahead. I've put the timestamps for the video below. So take your lining that doesn't have the welt pocket and place your slip pocket wrong side facing the right side of the lining, and match up the notches and then pin it. And we're going to baste around the edge, which is a long straight stitch, and we're going to do it at a 1/4 inch seam allowance because then we won't have to remove the stitches or anything. They'll just be hidden within the seam allowance when the bag is finished. Mark the midline on this slip pocket and then stitch down the middle. Be sure to backstitch a couple of times at the top, because as you're going in and out of these pockets, it's going to put a lot of pressure on the seam. So I'm going to do maybe 3 or 4 back stitches here. We're going to be working with one side of the bag at a time. Now I would like my slip pocket inside to be on the same side as my slip pocket on the outside, so I'm going to put those together, and then on the back of the bag I'm going to have the plain outside panel and the welt zipper panel. I'm just preparing my zipper, and for the medium bag you need a 12-inch zipper. So I've marked 12 inches on my zipper and given a little extra leeway where I'm going to attach the zipper tab, and then I've just cut off the end. I've also marked the midpoint because there's a notch in the top of the middle of the main panel which you're going to match up and then pin outwards towards the edges. I'm just going to pull off the teeth with some pliers up to this line, and then when I attach my zipper tabs I'm going to put them 3/8 of an inch away from this line and then stitch, and then I'm going to fold them back and top stitch about 1/8 of an inch away from that folded edge. If you are doing this, just try really hard not to allow these zipper teeth to separate on the area where you need the pull to go, because it'll be really difficult to get the pull back on afterwards. So I'm just holding it together. So on the center of the zipper where we just marked, we're going to match it to the center notch on the main panel A, and we're going to place the right side of the zipper with the zipper pull face down onto the outer main panel. And then pinning outwards towards the edges and just being really careful around this tight curve. So I've opened my zipper, and because the pull is really bulky and difficult to sew past, I am going to sew most of my seam, and then when I get close to where the pull is, I'm going to backstitch, take the whole project out, and then move the zipper pull down and finish the seam. So the zipper tabs may not exactly line up to the main panel here, and do not worry about that at all. Once you're finished attaching both sides, you can just trim that off so that it sits flush. Now, placing the right side of my lining panel face down and matching up the notches. And this is where things can start to get bulky, so I'm going to use some sewing clips to hold it down. Press these both away from the zipper and then top stitch 1/8 of an inch away. Just be aware that if you have a plastic or nylon coil zipper, you need to be using a low heat on the iron, otherwise you could melt your zipper and that would be a disaster. I'm going to use a zipper foot, and this time I'm going to try not to stop stitching because I want the top stitching to be one solid line. Hopefully, because we're a little bit further away from the zipper, we should be able to drop the needle and then lift the presser foot and just wiggle the zipper pull past. So I'm placing the right side of my zipper down on the right side of my outer main panel and matching the notches. And then placing the right side of the lining facing the wrong side of the zipper. Match up all your notches on your outer and lining main panels, so they're going to go wrong sides together, and then the right side is going to be facing out on both sides, and we're going to run a long straight stitch all the way around the edge, and it's just going to help us hold them together as one, so that when we start attaching the gusset, it's going to be much easier to control the fabric. The right side of the outer fabric strap tab is going to go on the right side of the outer fabric main panel, and then the right side of the lining strap tab will go facing the lining. And then center them over. The strap tab is the exact same for all the sizes of bags, so if you have a tiny bit of overhang, don't worry about it, you can just trim it off later. I'm just going to fold them back and give them a good press, and then top stitch at 1/8 of an inch. If you have any excess overhang from your strap tab, just trim it off right now, but don't take anything off the width of the top here because it needs to be exactly this wide to fit the strap in. I'm adding some piping to this seam. I would not recommend doing this if your machine is going to struggle with bulk, because then it's going to be another 2 layers of fabric and then especially with this hack for 2 slip pockets. We've already got 4 layers and interfacing, and then another 2 layers, and then we're going to have the gusset on top, so it ends up being quite a lot. But I'm going to show you how to do it anyway, just because if you want to, it's so pretty, and I think because I've used contrasting colors, it will really help to tie everything in. So I'm going to just baste it to the edge before I attach my gusset. So I'm starting down about 3/4 inch from the top, and then I'm going to pull the fabric back, but I'm going to cut off around 1 inch of this rope from inside the piping, and then taper this off so that once you've sewn the seam, it will just nicely taper to nothing, and then the strap will be attached above that. Before attaching the gusset, we're going to baste the 2 layers together. Place the wrong sides facing so that the right side is facing out, match all of the notches, and then run a long straight stitch around the edge so we can use this as one piece. So to attach the gusset, this step is exactly the same with piping or no piping. So working with one side of the bag at a time, I'm going to match the notches. So the outermost notches are going to match up with this seam between the strap tab and the main panel. And then the 2 notches in from that are going on either side of the corner. And you may notice that the corners look a little bit tight. So if you snip about 1/4 inch into the gusset, it's going to allow it to sit nice and flat. Make sure you don't snip further than 1/4 inch, because then you'll get holes and it will affect the structural integrity of the bag. I'm just going to sew all the way around. I'm going to be using a zipper foot because of the piping, but you should be able to just sew using your normal presser foot. Flip it right sides out and just make sure that none of the snips are showing and there's no holes or big puckers or anything like that. And I think that is laying beautifully. So I'm going to flip it back to the wrong side out and then open my zipper. Don't forget this step. Just repeat those exact same steps, matching all the notches, clipping the corners, and then sewing all the way around to the other side of the gusset. Open up the bias tape. This is double fold bias tape, so all of the raw edges are going to be completely enclosed, and start 3/4 inch down from the top so that it doesn't cause bulk where we're going to attach our strap. So all the way around. Because bias tape is cut on the bias, you should be able to maneuver around the corner without having to snip into it. So I'm going to do that, and then I'll meet you back here and I'll show you how to close it up. Now that you've sewn your binding all the way around, you're going to fold in this raw edge and then fold it around to the back. And then I'm going to clip mine all the way around, and you're going to stitch 1/8 inch away from the edge and just give it a top stitch through all of the layers to hold this at the back. I've bias bound one edge. I'm just going to go and repeat it for the other side, and then I will meet you back here and we can do the strap. So I'm actually going to use strap webbing for this bag, but I am going to show you how to do your own strap. So take your strap, and what you're going to do is fold it wrong sides facing, so the right sides are facing outwards, and then open it out and then fold the raw edges into the middle. And then you're going to do a long straight stitch down this open edge first, and then the other edge, just so that it matches. So I've got my hardware here, and I'm going to attach the rectangle ring to one side of the bag. To do that, I'm going to cut off 5 inches of my strap and then thread it through. And before I insert it into the bag, I'm just going to baste this end together so that it doesn't move around when I'm sewing. With the other section of strap, I'm going to thread it through my slider. Now, if there is a right and a wrong side to your slider, just make sure that you're going from back to front and then front to back. You want the front of the edges of the slider showing. And then fold your raw edge under. Don't do this too close to the slider because you won't be able to get it under your machine and stitch, but just stitch along the end there to hold that down. So now that I have my 2 sections, I'm going to thread the free end of this section through the rectangle ring, and I'm going to go from back to front, and then I'm going to go back through the slider, and now you have an adjustable strap. So just think about the orientation of your strap and which side of the body you want to wear your bag on. So if you have put anything on the outside that you specifically want on one side, then it's important to put the strap the right way around. If you need to like turn everything right sides out to visualize, then you can do that as well. So if I'm going to have this on the right hand side of my body, this is going to be the front. And I want my hardware at the back, so I'm going to put the hardware in this side and make sure that the right side of the strap is facing down towards the gusset. And of course make sure it's not twisted as you're inserting it. Now we're just going to go and sew over the ends, and I'm going to backstitch a few times because there's going to be a lot of pressure on this seam. Okay, now if there is any excess that you can trim off near to the strap opening, I would trim that off, but just be really careful not to go through any of your stitches because that will start to unravel your bag. And as you flip your bag right sides out, just be really careful not to put too much pressure on the ends of the zipper, especially if you're using one that is like a nylon coil. If you're happy with your bag like this, then you're more than welcome to finish here, but I am going to show you how to top stitch the gusset. So I'm going to carefully wiggle my bag underneath my machine, and the bias bound seams, I'm going to push them towards the gusset and then top stitch. But just be aware that the bobbin thread is what's going to be showing on the outside of the bag. So if you want it to match, then swap your bobbin thread to be a matching thread to the main fabric.